All right, here we go, you guys. This is another way to solve percents, and I would have to say this is probably my favorite, and one that you will use for the rest of your life. Because when you're buying things, you may be noticing that you're only paying 75% for an item of clothing, and you need to be able to calculate how much that is. Or let's say something is 90% off. You need to be able to quickly calculate how much you will be paying for that, especially like if Valentine's candy goes on sale and it's all 90% off. You would know that you're only paying for 10% of the original price of that, which is a great deal. So let's talk about this equation. The main thing that you have to know is this percent. If you know the percent, it can be in fraction or decimal form. You're just going to take that and multiply it times the whole. So if something cost $100 and you were going to pay 75% for it, you would put that in decimal form. Remember, 75% to turn from percent into a decimal, you just move the decimal place over 2 places, right? And then that would be equal to A, which is the part of the whole, or in this case, the price that you would pay, right? So 75% of 100 would be 75. All right. So we've just solved for the percent or the part by knowing the percent in decimal or fraction form and the whole. Now, remember the cool part about this equation is that you only have to know two parts in order to solve for the third part. So, we're going to look at some different examples where you are given two parts and you get to figure out how to solve it to discover what the third part is. So, our learning target is I can solve percent problems using the percent equation, which is this. So here's the question. What number is 24% of 50? Okay, so we know our percent, and we're going to put it in decimal form. We know our whole because it says 24% of 50, right? And you're solving for what number that is. So you're simply going to multiply 0.24 times 50. Now you can crunch that out just using multiplication, but I'm going to again show you a fun little strategy where you break this down into factors. So you would say, I know this would be 0.12 times 2 times 50. And if you group 2 times 50, that's 100. So you'd have 0.12 times 100. And when you're multiplying a decimal times anything that ends in zeros, 110, 1000, you know that you move the decimal point to the right the same number of times as zeros you have. Okay, so we have two zeros, we move it 2 spaces, so we know our A equals 12. So if you would alternatively like to stack this up and say 0.24 times 50, you can totally do that. And you need to remember when we multiply decimals, you need to count how many total decimal places we have in our factors. So this has 2 decimal places, this has 0 decimal places. We add them up, so our answer has to have 2 decimal places. So if we multiply this out, we get 0, and then we're going to move over to this column. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. And we do our quick check, say we need 2 decimal places, so our answer is 12. Okay, 12.00 is the same as 12. So we have figured out what is 24% of 50. And we're going to do a quick check and say, yeah, that would be about, I don't know, 1/4 of 50. And that would make sense because if we did this times 4, we would have 48. So we've done our quick mental math check and it does check out. So here's the next one. 9.5 is what percent of 25? So 9.5 is what percent? Ooh, we don't know our percent, but we do know our whole would be 25. So deciphering what parts you know is the most important part. So let's go back to that. 9.5 is what percent of 25? Another way to think of it is 9.5 equals what percent of 25? And you're continuing to go back to this original equation where your part of the whole equals the percent in decimal or fraction form times the whole. So here we go. We're going to solve this. So in order to solve for the percent, we know we're going to have to divide both sides by 25. Okay, this will cancel out and we'll just be left with p. So now we have 9.5 divided by 25, and let's do that. So when we are dividing decimals, you have to remember this decimal point is going to go straight up here in your answer. So 25 goes into 9, not at all. 25 goes into, now we're going to think of both these digits, 95. It's going to go in 3 times. 3 times 25 is 75. Subtract that out, we get 200. Oh, 25 is going to go into 200 nice and evenly 8 times. 8 times 25 is 200, so we don't have to keep subtracting. So this is our percent in decimal form, but it's asking 9.5 is what percent of 25. So if you said 0.38, you're almost there, but it's really asking for a percent. So this is in decimal form, but in percent form, it would be 38%. And that's our answer. Here's another example. We have 39 is what is 52% of what number? So we're going to put that in decimal form. 52% of what number? So we're going to say W. You can put any variable you want. And then in order to solve for W, we have to divide by whatever is multiplied by W. Remember inverse operations. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So this will cancel out, leaving just W. So now we have 39 divided by 0.52. 39 divided by 0.52. Now when we are dividing by fractions, or I'm sorry, dividing by decimals, you are going to remember that we want to move this decimal point so that we don't have any decimal digits out here. So what if we move it 2 spaces here, we're going to have to move it 2 spaces here, and our decimal point would be there. And then we have 3,900 divided by 52. So 52 goes into 39 0 times. 52 goes into 390. Boy, 50 would go into 400 8 times, so let's go with 7 times. 7 times 2 is 14. 5 times 7 is 35 plus 1 would be 36. Subtract that out. 10 minus 4 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. And bring down another digit. Okay, so this is about 250. This is about 50. So I'd say it goes in about 5 times. So 5 times 2 is 10. And we have 5 times 5 is 25 plus 1 is 26. All right, so we have 75 equals W. And we're always doing a quick check in our brains to see, does this make sense? So would about half of 75 be 39? Yeah, that seems about right. So we did solve it. So our whole is 75. All right, our next example is about finding the percent of sales tax on food. So this happens often. You go out to eat, right? And you have to pay tax, and then you have to pay tip. And so you're always finding percentages. So answer the question, 165 is what percent of 2750? So your total food bill was $27.50. You were charged this much tax, and you're just double checking to make sure they charged you the right rate. So let's figure this out. You don't know the percent, you do know your total, and you do know the part. So let's divide by whatever we're multiplying by our P, 2750. Okay, so this will cancel out because 2750 divided by 2750, well, that's just 1. 1 times P just leaves you with P. So now we have 165 divided by 2750. Okay? Well, we're going to move this decimal point. You know what? We have a 0 there. We only need to move this 1 spot because 27.5 is the same as 2750, right? If we have a 0 here at the end, it's okay to remove it. So we're moving it 1 spot. We're moving it 1 spot. I always put it right up there to remind me. So 275 goes in to 16 0 times. It goes into 165 0 times. So we are going to have to add another 0. 275 would go into this, what, about 6 times? Let's try 6. So it went in 0 times there. So we have 6. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 7 is 42, plus 3 is 45. And 6 times 2 is 12, plus 4 is 16. Oh, hooray, I love it when it's even. So it would be 0.06. If we were to put that in percent form, you paid about 6% tax, which is less than our tax rate here in Chelan County. Now I'm going to tell you, when you go to a restaurant and you pay a tip, you will typically pay close to 20%. So if you know your tax rate, you know that this was 165, and let's say you wanted to leave an 8% tip. Well, I'm sorry, not 8%, 18%, heavens. So if you take this and you multiply it by 3, you would have 18%. So if you take this original 165 that you paid in tax and you multiply that times 3, you would have a reasonable tip amount, and you can always round up and be kind to your servers. Okay? So that's how we use the percent equation. Remember, just a quick check of our learning target. You are going to use the A, which is our part, equals your percent in decimal or fraction form times the whole. Okay, now you can solve this. If you know any two of these parts, you can solve for the third or missing part. Good luck, and remember to show all your work. Do your work on paper and double check your answers using estimation to make sure they're reasonable. Thanks, guys.